Okay, thank you. So, hello everybody. It's a great privilege and pleasure to be here to welcome you to this really important event on the global list of digitally endangered species. I'm Lorna Hughes, and my honour today is to welcome you to the University of Glasgow, both to our physical attendees here in a packed room in Glasgow University Library, and to our global delegates who are watching this internationally through the wonder of the internet. It's a great pity you can't join us in Glasgow because Scotland is at its most beautiful today. The sun is shining, the sky is blue, it's not raining, and it's St Andrew's Day, so we'll all be having a wee dram afterwards, so we'll be toasting all of you. I'm delighted to welcome you to the University of Glasgow, to the School of Humanities and the College of Arts, which is the home institution of the Digital Preservation Coalition. They're based in the subject area Information Studies, which some of you may remember used to be called HATI. It's a research and teaching department which focuses on all aspects of the information life cycle in the digital age. We're the only similar department in the country that offers research and teaching on museums, archives, libraries, and digital humanities. And of course, Glasgow's been the base of a great deal of very important research into digital curation and digital preservation. So it's a very happy home for the digital preservation, and we're very glad to see events like this taking place globally, emphasising what we always say about Glasgow University, which is we have local activities that are very important, but everything we do is globally focused. And I think that's especially important in terms of the topic today and the overall theme of digital preservations. So we're embedded in a large number of international organisations. You can see that the DPC sit alongside colleagues in a large number of research areas around information studies. And there's a lot of research goes on in our subject area, and we all collaborate with DPC, and we're very interested to talk to them, especially about their very important policy work, which relates so well with so much of the research that we do here at Glasgow. I think essentially the thing that drives us at the moment, certainly it drives my own research, hands up, I'm a digital humanities person, but I think what drives an awful lot of research around digital preservation is the concerns about being a human and having human information requirements in a digital age. And it's not just about converting historic sources to digital, but it's about working with born digital data. And I think understanding the things that make us human, the primary sources, our correspondence, our exchanges, our photos, our images, in a digital age is why this is such a pressing and important topic at this time. So there's a number of research challenges that we're all working on at the moment. The themes of today are very much tied in with these kind of topic areas which will be familiar to you in your research and are part of our day-to-day research here at Glasgow. So I will hand over now to the next speakers and welcome once again, and congratulations, and I hope you have a very successful day. Thank you.
There's always some technical glitch. It's certainly coming through the speakers. I'm coming through the speakers, Paul. Is that coming
Testing.
through the live feed? Okay, thank you very much. Well, apologies for that moment of interruption. We managed to get it up and running, so that's super. So to repeat then, a warm welcome to you all here in the room, and a warm welcome to all of our viewers online, watching live, but also watching the recording, which I know is going to be well received by colleagues and partners around the world, not least because the work that I'm going to present to you in the next 20 minutes is work which has involved scholars and professionals and practitioners from around the world. It is the 30th of November, International Digital Preservation Day, amongst many other things. It's now about 11:45 in Glasgow time, and the bit list is embargoed till 12 o'clock. So that gives me just a few minutes to give you a word of background around the global list of digitally endangered species. So why have we created the bit list? Well, first of all, let me observe that this is an outcome of a shared endeavour. The Digital Preservation Coalition has been at the forefront of it, but we've very much shared the work with our partners and digital preservation agencies around the world. And a special thanks, therefore, go to our colleagues at NCDD in the Netherlands, Nestor in Germany, NDSA in America, and also our colleagues in the Open Preservation Foundation. And we've created the bit list for a fairly straightforward reason. Digital preservation typically makes bleak reading. Digital preservation presentations normally start with tales of data loss. So let us in the room and indeed online have a show of hands of anyone who has ever lost any files that they may have been working on. I can reassure you online that everyone in the room has their hand up, because they well know that if they didn't have their hand up, they would have to do the rest of this presentation. Digital preservation typically makes bleak reading, and sometimes it makes terribly bleak reading. There is a narrative around digital preservation which leads inevitably to the digital dark age, a time not only when data is in peril, but civilization itself is thrown into chaos when the bits die. Now, it's my job in the Digital Preservation Coalition to raise awareness, to get people to invest and to think strategically and confidently around digital preservation. And when I'm presented with these sorts of narratives, I can't pretend it's a very tempting narrative to get involved in, because all you need is a good scare story to get people involved in your work. But I wonder whether this narrative is realistic. I wonder if this falls into a narrative structure which has coming soon, the apocalypse. I wonder whether this is overlooking some important aspects of digital preservation, some of which have been in discussion here in Glasgow prior to our webcast. I wonder if this discussion leads inevitably, sometimes perhaps coincidentally, to a sales pitch for a storage device which will never die. And I wonder whether this narrative ignores some really great work. I wonder if this narrative ignores some really great work which we have in the coalition, the privilege of celebrating every 2 years through the Digital Preservation Awards. Some really great work by some really clever people for more than 10 years. The Digital Preservation Coalition founded in 2002. It's been 15 years since we started raising awareness on this digital preservation issue. And to my mind, it's time that we present some new messages around digital preservation. And still, if there is press coverage, if there is media coverage of digital preservation at all, it still reaches for the digital dark age narrative. So let me present to you, therefore, today, two simple tools, two simple initiatives which will, we hope, help set the agenda, help change the agenda, and make the agenda one led actually by the digital preservation community. We start on the 30th of November with the International Digital Preservation Day, kicking off in Wellington at 7 a.m. Wellington time, which was 7 p.m. last night, and continuing through, well, I think the last event's in San Francisco, California, at about 8 o'clock our time tonight. A global activity encompassing a global audience. That activity to raise awareness, that activity to connect this fast-growing, diverse and dispersed community. And as our contribution to the International Digital Preservation Day, I'm going to share with you now the outcomes of a piece of work we've been doing, which is the global list of digitally endangered species, also known as the BIT list. So a bit of background about the bit list. It comes from the DPC. It comes from the DPC membership. It comes from specifically a subcommittee of the DPC, which is called the Advocacy and Communications Subcommittee. So it comes from through the DPC members. It comes from the digital preservation community, and it's modelled on the Red List. The Red List is the international list of digitally endangered species, and it lists the different threats faced and categorises the threats faced by different endangered species. There are, in fact, 6 categories on the Red List, and I'll come to those in a minute, which present a series, a mix of successes and challenges that the digital preservation community faces. There is a mix of types, and there is a mix of risks, and we make no apology for that, because in our view, this domain of digital preservation is characterized by many different types of risk and many different types of species, many different types of material. And in 2017, we create it from scratch. So what I'm presenting to you today is the first iteration of the bit list, and it's very much my hope to return to you in a year's time or more to reflect not simply new materials added to the bit list, but also things moving up and down the list, in order that we may not simply share our worries, but also more effectively share our successes. So if this works, we'll update this annually. Let me say a bit about the process. The bit list process started with an open nominations process. We ended up with something in the region of 100 proposals to the bit list. Here's John Scally, the National Librarian of Scotland, providing his suggestions on a postcard to us. A very lightweight nomination process, and that lightweight nomination process was simply to encourage participation. It was felt that a heavy nomination process would exclude people, discourage them from participating, and that's not what we want. We want the whole community to engage. A jury has met to review those nominations, has met now 4 times. I'll turn to the jury in a moment and describe their work, but the work was only finalised last week. I don't want to say this has been a white knuckle ride, but we are talking about really material which is hot off the press. So the jury, let me offer a word of thanks on your behalf and also on behalf of the Digital Preservation Coalition to the international jury which met to discuss and to debate and to refine the nominations which we had received. I won't read them out, there are too many, but to observe that the nominations we received were in some cases duplicates, there was a great deal of nesting, there was a great deal of overlap between the nominations. Some of them were very clear, very precise, very specific. Some of them were entire classes, entire genres, entire technologies were nominated. And the jury has had the difficult and challenging job, but always a genial and good-spirited job of sorting through those many nominations. So let me pause for a moment then and thank again the jury who have given so generously of their time in this process. A jury, I should note, of DPC members and DPC allies, a jury, I should note, on 3 continents, and I think I counted 7 different countries on the list. Here are our categories. We have 6 categories of risk associated with digital materials. We go from lower risk materials through vulnerable, endangered, critically endangered, practically extinct, and then a final category of concern. So we note that some materials are at risk, but if actions are not taken, they potentially move up the list. So they move from lower risk to vulnerable to critically endangered, perhaps even towards practical extinction. We've also generated the possibility for materials to drop down the list. So critically endangered materials with some simple actions can, through time, move down into the lower risk categories. And finally, a list or a grouping, which we've simply said, of concern, which is where a member of the digital preservation community, in good standing, so to speak, has nominated, expressed a concern, but to be honest, the jury has not had the time or the resources properly to assess the concerns which have been raised. Those materials of concern are available then for review by the committee, by the jury next year. And of course, that of concern category invites you to continue this process. It invites you to continue nominating materials to us over the next 12 months. In each category, and here's a blanked out version, just in case, redacted, in case we let anything slip, we have a nomination. We have a nominated piece of information by a DPC member. We have a type of action. So the jury is proposing action against each of these nominations. What type of action, how quickly that action should follow. We have a note of when something was entered onto the list in order that we can track its progress through time. We have allocated a risk assessment against each category. We provide examples of each category. So some of these categories are quite broad. We provide individual examples of materials, which are simply examples. They are not categorical. There are potentially more examples to be added. A selection of examples associated with each category and things to watch out for. We call these the aggravating conditions. And in the presence of aggravating conditions, an object can move up the list quite quickly. So, in a specific instance, in the presence of those aggravating conditions, an object can move up the list. So what might appear a vulnerable object becomes an endangered object where those aggravating conditions exist. So that, in short, is how we've come to the bit list. And I think it's now time for me to remove that embargo. The list is online. You will be pleased to know that of the 20 or so nominations that we have received, it's not my intention to give you a blow-by-blow account of each nomination and to talk to you about the aggravating conditions or the implications that that might have for them in the long term. Let me therefore simply give you a summary of our findings and let you explore those findings online as we go. The first category is the vulnerable category. Digital materials are listed as vulnerable when the technical challenges to preservation are modest, but responsibility for care is poorly understood, or where the responsible agencies are not in a position to meet the preservation needs for whatever reason. Now, this classification includes lower risk materials in the presence of aggravating conditions. There is one nomination allocated to the vulnerable grouping, and that nomination is for materials posted to current active web-based social media platforms and their equivalents. So this is the space for your tweets and for your Facebook posts and for your blogs. In the second category, the endangered category, digital materials are listed as endangered when they face material technical challenges to their preservation, or responsibility for care is poorly understood, or where the responsible agencies are poorly equipped to meet the preservation need. Now, this classification, of course, includes vulnerable materials in the presence of those aggravating conditions. In this category, we have many more nominations. There are 8 classes of nomination in the endangered species category. Born digital photos and video shared on social media or uploaded to cloud services. Corporate records of long duration held on network drives, intranets, or document systems. As a sub-example of that, I know at least one member of the DPC is interested to know where Google Drive ended up. That's quoted under this heading as an example. Digital legal records and digital evidence presented in court proceedings. Digital music production and sharing. Digital radio recordings. Orphaned works where copyright cannot be traced. Published research outputs, including, for example, e-journals, e-books, e-serials. And finally, records of long duration held from local government or other government agencies. These materials are classified as endangered. In the critically endangered category, digital materials are listed when they face material technical challenges to preservation and there is no agency responsible for them, or those agencies are unwilling or unable to meet the preservation needs. And this classification includes those endangered materials when aggravating conditions are present. In this category, another large group of nominations. There are 10 items in the critically endangered list. Born digital images held offline or on portable storage devices. Community archives and community-generated content. Digital materials stored on magnetic portable media, especially where that portable media is past its warranty. Digital materials stored on older portable non-magnetic media, also when that material is out of warranty. Family and personal photographs and records in that list. Media art. Politically sensitive data. One nomination which caught our eye for US environmental data, for example, falling into that classification. Smartphone apps and unpublished research outputs. That is to say, things which would not normally fall within the sphere of a legal deposit collection. For example, research data sets, email correspondence between researchers, and, for example, research blog posts. Finally, practical extinction. Digital materials are listed as practically extinct when the few known examples are inaccessible by most practical means. This classification obviously includes critically endangered materials in the presence of aggravating conditions. It's important to emphasize before I proceed that this reflects what we believe to be practical extinction. That's to say there may well be examples, and indeed we invite the community to tell us of examples where these materials have been saved or made available for the long term. And we have 2 nominations in the category of practical extinction. Pre-World Wide Web video text data services and bulletin board services. Examples, for example, FidoNet or Minitel or Prestel services. And pre-World Wide Web view data and teletext services, such as, for example, CFAX. It's important to understand that both of those nominations relate to well-funded, well-established, very popular platforms in their own time. They may no longer be available to us. Their loss is a loss in historic terms for researchers who might otherwise have been interested in studying print media or print journalism, for example. And that loss to the research community is valid and real. However, the tendency towards loss is profound and affects all of us. Insofar as these are large, well-funded, popular platforms that existed in their time and they are no longer with us, we find a model or a risk which all digital materials ultimately face. We have categorized the materials as to the best of our ability, but we recognize that with a diverse jury, we are not in a position to assess all of the materials that were nominated to us. And in the spirit, therefore, of sharing our work with you, we want to share with you the materials which were expressed to us as being of concern, but which we were not in a position properly to review as part of the process. Digital materials are of concern when an active member of the digital preservation community has expressed legitimate concern, but the concern has not been assessed yet by the bit list jury, and they will be assessed for inclusion in future years. We have 9 items which meet this classification. PDF, websites containing flash, email, data posted to defunct or little used social media platforms, geomagnetic data, pre-production TV and movie materials, pension, mortgage and insurance records, medical records, architectural and engineering data, especially when they relate to objects with a long life cycle. So we share these with you as areas of concern, but we also open the door now for additional nominations and for your own consideration as to the materials which you believe to be of concern. I want to conclude this presentation by sharing with you some messages from our experience of reviewing the bit list. I have 3 messages for you. Firstly, in digital preservation, we talk often about obscure challenges to digital materials. We talk often about the prospect of loss to systems or to data. But loss is real, and the consequences of that loss are played out in the real world. My second message to you. Digital preservation, on the basis of the nominations received, is very obviously a socio-technical challenge. And if all we offer are technical solutions, then we will not succeed. It is striking to me that nominations should include so many nominations for what might be termed politically sensitive materials, or for materials which would otherwise be very safe if the technology were more widely distributed. Both of these, to me, point towards the fact that those skills are poorly understood and that organizations and individuals need to take more responsibility for the preservation of digital materials. Organizational change is as much part of what we need to achieve as technical skill. A third message reflects back on where we started our presentation today. Digital preservation is no longer about the risk of a digital dark age. Digital preservation is fundamentally about coming good on the digital promise. Let me commend the bit list to you. Let me thank once again all of those who have been involved in the project. And let me end now by wrapping up and inviting Laura Mitchell, outgoing chair of the DPC, to bring our proceedings to a conclusion.
Thank you, William. Yes, it just falls to me to say a final roundup of thanks to all the people who've been involved in this, especially to the jurors and to Professor Jane Winters, who chaired that jury, but also to the Advocacy Subcommittee of the DPC, and to Sarah Middleton for handling all the logistics, but also to the wider DPC staff, all of whom have been very involved in this. Thank you again to the University of Glasgow Library for hosting us today, and to the University of Glasgow Information Studies for hosting the DPC offices round the corner in University Gardens. The digital material that we're all dealing with may well exist in a virtual way, but the staff certainly don't. And having a physical place to put their laptop and have a kettle is very much appreciated. Thank you to everybody out there who contributed nominations to this first ever bit list, and to everybody out there at the moment watching this webcast. Thank you for logging on. Please do have a look at the list. Please send in nominations and comments. And finally, this is just a reminder that the bit list is a member-led activity, as are all DPC activities. I think we've got 72 members now. And at the annual general meeting a couple of days ago, we had a roundup of what had happened over the last DPC year, which is kind of ties in with the academic year. And we'd put on 43 events for our members, including 24 webcasts. So I hope that that means that you lot out there can be involved a lot more that way. And if you're not already part of the coalition, I think that shows just how valuable it is to be a member, and so I would encourage you to think about joining. Thank you very much, everybody, and that concludes this webcast.